have fun with it. It's a very personal, it's a very fun way of communicating. As you mentioned, it's not email. You don't have to copy paste this massive text. The open rates of SMS is there. It's really high. It's more of like, are customers going to read this? Are they going to click through? Is that CTA there for them to say, hey, I'm going to make a purchase? But when you get a message, you don't want it to be like an email. So I would say to brands, have fun, add your personality to it. There's some of the brands that I work with that they're not following your typical way of, very structured. They have a very fun way of communicating, like you would text your friend.
You are listening to the Messenger Mastermind podcast, a podcast that provides actionable tactics for quickly growing e-commerce companies to profitably scale their business. The strategies shared in this podcast are implemented daily by companies generating millions of dollars in revenue each year. Our goal is to help you build long-term profitable relationships with your customers.
Summer is here, and with the world returning back to normal, we can expect customers to get back to their usual on-the-go activities, and your marketing needs to connect with them quickly. SMS Marketing allows you to connect with customers directly through their phones. Trusted by brands like Brooklinen, Native, Fanjoy, and more, Postscript is the leading text message marketing platform for brands on Shopify and Shopify Plus. Learn more and get a free 30-day trial at postscript.io. Want to accelerate your SMS subscriber database even faster with more qualified shoppers? Justuno has you covered. Easily collect subscribers with a tap-to-text opt-in for mobile visitors or seamless SMS lead captures across your site. Plus, Justuno directly integrates with leading SMS platforms like Postscript to easily share your hard-earned opt-ins. Justuno's best practices with impression rates ensure that your KPIs don't become overinflated vanity metrics and that your opt-ins are easily shared with your SMS platform. Plus, you can get access to your data anytime. So you can get the data and insights you want when you want them. Get started with a free trial of Justuno today and accelerate your SMS subscription growth. Head over to justuno.com/mastermind to learn more and snag your exclusive discount for being a Messenger Mastermind listener. Welcome to another week's episode of the Messenger Mastermind podcast. As always, I'm your host, Jeremy Horowitz, and today we are joined by another incredible guest, someone who I'm really excited to dive into something that we're super passionate here about Messenger Mastermind, SMS and conversational marketing. But you don't need to listen to me ramble on for a while, so let's get right into it. Let me allow you to introduce you to Wassim Dakik, the Enterprise Customer Success Manager at Postscript. Wassim, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, Jeremy. Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate you cutting out the time. I know that you're insanely busy working with a lot of big brands. So before we dive into the good stuff and what we came to talk about today, what I'd love to know, and kind of what I ask everybody because I just enjoy these answers, is how did you get into this crazy game of e-com?
Yeah, for sure. I'll try and keep it as short as possible. It's a bit of a long answer, but essentially, after I graduated my undergrad, I got into setting up and running my own business, but I had studied business management, so I always wanted to be get into the corporate world. But at that point, there was the large recession that hit the UK and Ireland. But after setting up my business, I decided to take up my master's, and I did a master's in e-commerce. And once I got my master's, a lot more opportunities opened up. And then I found myself in Canada, where I'm living now in Toronto, and I joined, at that point, I joined Shopify Plus, and that's how I really got into the e-commerce world. And it's been a crazy journey so far.
That's super cool. Okay. You're actually legitimately the first person I've asked this question to who went to school for e-com. So I have to ask, what was the program structured like?
Yeah, I always get this question. So I did my master's in DCU, Dublin City University. It was the first master's in e-commerce that they had created. So it was a very new program. E-commerce was just e-commerce has been around for a while, but it just started to take off in a sense of it being a career for a lot of people. So we covered a lot of different stuff from setting up websites and risk, and just, even touching on JavaScript and how you can build certain things on your website, all the way down to SEO and just marketing online. So we covered a lot of topics, but not until I started working at Shopify Plus was it really where I got all my experience and really understood this is how these large businesses operate online. But yeah, it was very exciting course to take. So it's really helped me.
Yeah, that's super cool. I guess I'm going to go back and correct like 50 responses to questions in the past about how there isn't school for ecom, because apparently there is now.
There is, yeah.
So that's super cool. So then you went to Shopify Plus, and then what are you working on now?
So now I'm working at Postscript, which is a certified Shopify Plus app partner, and we focus just on SMS. So, I had worked before Shopify Plus. I was working at Twilio, which is, the underlying technology for a lot of these voice and SMS companies. So that's where I kind of really got my taste in the SMS industry, if you want to call it. And when I did join Shopify Plus, I was very focused on the SMS side of things for business, just because I knew how powerful that kind of avenue is. So saw an opportunity at Postscript, something that really aligned with my interests and my experience. And that's where I am. I'm a customer success manager for enterprise, and I work primarily with Shopify Plus stores, so the large merchants.
Very cool. So let's dive into the good stuff. So what I would love to, especially with your experience where you're sitting right now and kind of the brands you work with, just dive into like, what are some of the best ways? How are people using SMS?
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot of different ways that the brands are using SMS. I think just to kind of base it on my direct experience with Postscript, kind of twofold. A lot of it is focused on like automation. So anything that can be automatically sent to customers, whether it's like order notifications, abandoned carts, customer winbacks. So that's kind of like one main side that a lot of these large merchants are dealing with. And then the other half of that is your campaigns. So kind of similar to like email campaigns, SMS campaigns. So sending out new product launches, back in stock alerts, uh, flash sales, Black Friday sales. And now I'm starting to see more like conversational content going out as campaigns versus, hey, we just have a sale. So those are kind of like the main areas that a lot of these merchants are starting to use SMS.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like the automations campaigns are kind of like the tried and true foundations of a good program. Some people might go a little heavy on the promotional side of that. But I mean, something that we've been talking about for years and something that I personally, it's what draws me to the channel the most. And what I think is the most interesting about it is the conversational piece. So for anyone who isn't familiar or maybe hasn't gotten into the like technical weeds of what conversational SMS is, can you just like at a high level break that down of like, what would you consider a conversational SMS to look like for a brand?
Yeah, I think, and this can be whether it's through a campaign or through an automation, just having that conversational back and forth communications with your customers. Now, if we go back to like the fundamentals of businesses before the time of e-commerce, with like brick and mortar stores, and that's where I have my experience. Just having a consumer walk into your store, being able to have a back and forth conversation, basically the sale, whether that's answering their questions or enticing them a little bit more to make a purchase. We're kind of taking that fundamental way of doing business, but bring it into SMS. So having that conversation, for example, if you send an abandoned cart, hey, you left this in your item. Is there anything I can help with? Text back, and then have that conversation with your customers where they're saying, actually, how does this size fit? Or, what are other people saying about this product? And just have that conversation between your customer service team or whoever with that customer, and just kind of build that relationship. And then that can really help increase your chance of conversions.
Yeah, because the channel is not a billboard, right? Like you're not just sending one massive message out that everybody's supposed to consume. And it's also interesting that the people who test this in email as well, because they see similar results. That was interesting that you brought up a very specific like point of for abandoned cart not leading with some sort of like promotion or offer, but more of the customer support side. So can you just walk through like, okay, I'm working at a brand. I want to set this up. I want to go down conversational, but I'm a little concerned that my support team will be overwhelmed or can't handle the bandwidth or like doesn't really know how to do this. What's the best way for me to help them and like empower them to not only make this a part of their workflow, but then to really like leverage this to be a great evangelism channel for them?
Yeah, for sure. And it's a good point, and it's definitely something that brands need to be aware, depending on your size, depending on your capability of the team. If there's if they have a lot of resources, because we do have great integrations, you can integrate, Postscript's responses. So that back and forth conversational SMS with like Zendesk and Gorgeous. So, depending on the size of your team, it's something that you can definitely do and have it set up in free flow. But of course, you're going to have to set aside specific time throughout the day or couple of times during the week to answer those messages back, have that conversation back and forth. And you see that same instance with even smaller size businesses. You still have to find a kind of schedule because, e-commerce is 24/7. People can be responding back at any time of the day with specific questions that can get you that conversion. So it's a lot, from my experience of working with these brands, there's still a lot of planning around having a team or someone who's focused on those responses and building that conversation. So
Yeah, definitely. I also think it's so interesting because it kind of solves that age-old problem of how do we convert our support team into a revenue-driving team. And I think like if you build it in properly with the macros and everything else, like you truly can get to a place where it's efficient at scale, but also can really turn into like, hey, let's drive some more sales through the site as well. So do you have any good examples or good stories of a brand that has effectively rolled this out?
yeah, there's a couple of brands, and I mean, I've started looking into this a little bit more in terms of businesses who are looking at their customer service team as more of a revenue generator, because they're basically on the front lines talking with customers, straight away if there's an issue, and a lot of the times if you can solve a customer pain or an issue, that can then turn into a conversion. So a lot of businesses are starting to focus on that side of business and generating revenue. There's a lot of different businesses, I mean, from protein supplements to clothing brands to home goods that will use that connection. And then any responses that come in, they'll be able to go back and forth with the customer, not just with abandoned carts. It could be anything. Like I've seen campaigns that are being sent out with kind of the wording of like, hey, any questions? Can we help you with anything? And it's being directed out to their team, and their team is able to respond back and forth and kind of really solve the problem and then build that kind of brand strategy or kind of brand image with the customers. So it's not just all the time where it's a direct, I'm a customer service team, I'm going to help you, but it's for the long term as well. And I've seen a lot of consumers and customers of brands really hype up a company just because of their customer service team and being able to respond back quickly.
Yeah, definitely. And I think such a big part of the conversation in general of personalization that's missed is that half of that is your company being more personal with the customers, not just you giving a more dynamic experience based on the customer's journey. So I think it's so important to like really also show that like personality and that flavor in those responses. And then, yeah, I think it's such a great point of like, if somebody's asking a question, they're clearly like interested enough that they're probably ready to buy. So that speed of SMS is so important also of like, it's not going to get buried in their email and they're not going to see it for 3 days. They're going to see that message pretty immediately. So that's really exciting. Is there any other interesting use cases you've seen where someone's taken that SMS and those responses and just changed it or built it into something that you weren't necessarily expecting, or just like wow, that's really cool?
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that I will help merchants set up, like let's say an abandoned cart automation, we'll split it out where we're sending out a specific abandoned cart for new customers. So the wording is going to be a little bit different. That routes to a different team, who's someone maybe who's, a customer service team who's experienced a little bit more in dealing with net new customers. So how do we entice them a little bit more? How do we bring our brand, our personality into this conversation versus maybe an abandoned cart that's set up for an existing or returning customer, someone who's already purchased from you before. So the conversation is going to go a little bit more different in that sense, where you're going, you're not, if you have a customer who's purchased multiple times, I don't think we're going to entice them with the free shipping over $50. It's a lot more different conversation like, hey, how was the last products? What have you, any feedback, and vice versa, versus someone who's like a net new customer. So that's kind of how I'm seeing the split through that conversations through abandoned carts, as an example.
Yeah, definitely. And it's so interesting how that just like, even that little split of just like new versus returning customer for a flow like that can have such a different impact on performance and the responses you get. That's another thing that's like what I've seen is it's a very small thing to do that has a massive impact on the customer experience and like how they interact with the brand. So I find that really interesting. I know we also, when we jumped on before this, we were talking about using it for customer feedback. How, like, is that like we're routing all the responses in our like support ticket system and then tagging that? Or is there a different way that we can grab more customer feedback using SMS?
Yeah, there's multiple ways that, a lot of the brands are doing it, whether it's through a campaign. Let's say I send out a specific product campaign and, based on whoever clicked or opened that campaign or made a purchase, we can then send a follow-up campaign to those specific parties and say, hey, how was your product, or what did you like about it, or X, Y, and Z. And then from that way, depending on which team is dealing with those responses, they can communicate, based on it. But I'm also seeing like a lot of automations based on post purchases. So like, I know you, Jeremy, have purchased X product. I will follow up 15 days after the order delivered trigger has been set off. So, you have enough time to have used the product, and then I can come back and hit you with, hey, how have things been? Any feedback? Click this link. Leave us a review, because of course, that's one of the great ways to drive conversions and get your conversions up, is by having a lot more reviews. So I'm seeing a lot of customers push towards that, of using that conversation back and forth to get customers to give a review of their product, or whatever else they had purchased.
Yeah, that's super cool, especially with the integrations with all the reviews platforms like Okendo. That makes it really simple to just automate all of that. And then, I mean, the response rates on SMS are just so much higher than email. That's a good way to boost reviews as well. Something that we actually did for one of our brands who operates on a drop model is, before, like 2 weeks before we released the product, we asked which design, we sent like especially a split image like photo in the MMS. We asked which product would you prefer, and gave them 2 keywords. And then they could vote for their favorite product based on the keywords. That then was also a great follow-up of just like segment based on who responded with this keyword, which has also been really interesting. Of like, we try to filter that into like, what products are going to be successful, what products do people like, what categories of products, like from a design or from an aesthetic perspective, which has been really interesting to see, like how many people will interact with that first, and then go and, like, when we actually send the like launch message, interact with that, go and buy, and just like also respond. Because there's so much value in like what people will say when they get those types of messages.
Yeah, I have a bunch of makeup merchants who sell like skincare, kind of face creams, and they use that technique actually a lot in their campaigns. Instead of sending like, hey, and they do it at times, but I've pushed them a lot towards having that conversation. Instead of sending your first campaign, or all your campaigns being, here's 25% off our flash sale, for example, posing a question like, hey, what is your skin type? Text back keyword acne, or text back keyword oily. And then from there, whoever texts that back, you separate them in a group. And then you then have that segment of customers that you can only send acne prone or acne repairing cream to that subset of customers. So, I'm seeing a lot more merchants use that for their own data, and kind of building out their own segments within Postscript, just because, just from having that conversation of, what do you like? Do you prefer dark chocolate versus white chocolate? Put all the dark chocolate fans in one segment versus the white chocolate fans. And I've seen a lot more merchants do that, and just really building that conversation back and forth.
Yeah, and that's one of those like perfect examples of why I love this. Is it's the customers almost get their own choose your own adventure, where it's like, you don't have to get the same message as everybody else. It's like, hey, I'm only here for this, or these are the things that I care about. Like, point me towards this. Don't point me towards the like whatever fudge category that I don't care as much about, which I think is so interesting, because it just allows us so much an easier way to like create great content that doesn't get watered down by just a bunch of different messages trying to appeal to a bunch of different people.
Yeah, and it allows like customers to build their own journey on a website or with a brand, versus, as you said, here's this one type of message, reply back to this to get this one type of message that everyone else is going to get. And it just doesn't, it's not really the way consumers work. They want to come on a website, they want to interact, talk with a brand. Every consumer is an individual. Everyone has their own types of questions, own types of concerns about a product. And the more and more business I see using that technique, it works really well for them, and they build that brand loyalty and that customer loyalty, where consumers are saying, hey, this brand understands we're not getting the same copy pasted message for everything. We're actually having a conversation back and forth, like you would do in a brick and mortar store if you're speaking to a sales executive or someone in the store, like a store assistant. And I think, as I mentioned before, just going back to that basic, but also, kind of staying with the times in this whole e-commerce and technology space.
Yeah, and I love SMS because it's kind of a bridge channel where it's like email is too slow to have that back and forth, and live chat is very hard to, or like phone is very hard to sustain. Whereas SMS is like you have the break, you can talk to multiple people at once, and you can automate enough of it that it's not the huge, just overwhelming amount for the CS team, where you can really like go back and forth with it, which I think is kind of what I see it as like the greatest benefit of like you have the quick turn of a conversation, but you don't have the heavy commitment of only focusing on one person at a time.
Yeah, and it's funny because I remember, and I'm sure it still happens today with email, but back in the day, a lot of emails you would get, it would always say no reply, do not reply, and it just you get this email and it kind of stops you in your pattern. Like, well, what if I have a question? And that's what I love about SMS, where it doesn't have to be such a large message. You can just reply back with a question like, hey, I'm interested, but do you have this size in this color, for example? And I think that's why a lot of customers are loving this channel, this own channel of SMS, because you just have that ability to communicate. We're in this age of everyone communicates back and forth, whether it's on social media, or your Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. So why not push this towards SMS, where you can have that continued back and forth conversation, versus email at times can feel a bit more static, which is it just doesn't work with consumers.
I'm like now thinking about it'd be pretty funny. Like if you sent someone an email and just wrote, do not reply to this email, like a person to person, like it's just not very like, it's not how you would, I can't imagine sending like, I don't know, my family or friends an email. And like the beginning of the email is just do not reply.
Yeah, exactly. It's not very encouraging. It's when you see that, and I've seen it in the past. The first thing that comes to my mind is like, so you don't want me to communicate with you? I'm the customer and this is the business. Whereas now there's a lot more push of like, text us back, ask us any question. We will reply here and there on your message on the go straight away. And so, I mean, people are loving it and they're getting their answers, the answers to all their questions. They're building that trust with the brand and they're converting. And you can see the rates of conversions to SMS are through the roof.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those it's one of those nice channels that like hasn't been overly abused yet, where it's like customers are also still excited about it because it's like, oh, there's this new thing. It's all these new experiences. So I feel like we've been diving pretty good into the weeds here. Now let's talk about all the ways to make a ton of money. We've presented all the ways to create a lot of value for customers. Now let's talk about the good stuff. So we're probably right in the middle. This episode will come out right in the middle of where a lot of customers will be focusing on their BFCM plans and like really how they ramp up. This year, it's going to be all over the place. I mean, last year we saw brands launching it as early as mid-October for their holiday promotions. So as people are thinking about it, as people are thinking either weaving SMS into their program if they haven't started already, or they have it, but they really want to take it to the next level. What are some things, some strategies that brands can think about that will really move the needle for them, not only building their SMS program, but also sales and all the good business stuff?
Sure. Yeah. And I think this year's Black Friday is going to be very interesting. Last year, I think Shopify and they released some figures that they had processed $5 billion. 70% of that was done through mobile. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this year is. But a lot of the stuff that I'm speaking to my merchants about, especially now, and I do believe that the sales are going to start a little bit earlier. And it's no longer going to be just in November, October. It's going to start September. And I've already started planning with a lot of my merchants around Black Friday. One of the main things that I'm speaking about is growing your list, getting more and more subscribers to opt into your SMS and have them, especially with all the changes with iOS and Facebook and all the difficult ways of now being able to communicate and I guess target your customers. So there's a lot of push that I'm doing with my customers to keep growing your SMS list, because once Black Friday hits, at least you'll have a decent amount of list growth or number of subscribers to target with campaigns or retarget with customer win back. So growing your list, very, very important part. But I'm also focusing right now during these summer months to try and get more non or net new customers who have maybe subscribed but never purchased from you before, to get them into that funnel. Because it's a lot more easier to convert someone after they've purchased twice versus a net new customer and then you're waiting for Black Friday. So that's another push I'm doing, even if we have to target a segment of customers who've never purchased before. give them a little bit of an extra sale or discount to get them over the hurdle, get them into that funnel. And then once the holiday seasons come around, it's going to be a lot more easier to turning into a repeat customer second or third time versus 0 to 1.
Absolutely love that. Always, like, it's just, I don't want to oversimplify it, but also at a certain point, it is just math, right? Like, you need to have a bigger list to have a bigger selling opportunity. And there is a somewhat proportional relationship there. And yeah, I think I see so many brands do either some sort of like Labor Day or mid-fall promotion or launch that leads into PFCM. And I just still see so many brands just pound their existing lists for that, give it a little bit of a break, and then just go back and hit everybody again, versus like, okay, how can we creatively get people onto a new channel like SMS for one of these events, and whether it's an early access or exclusive link or some exclusive discount or something like that, to then build up the list for that event. And then, yeah, I think it's a great idea, because if you can bring in all those subscribers who haven't converted yet, that's a great way to just get a first purchase in, get a quick second purchase in with a great BFCM sales. That, I don't know, I also just have this weird feeling like consumers are going to start shopping for their holidays in like September or like August. Like, I just have this weird thought. I've had this weird feeling that people are just gonna be like, I'm shopping all the time. There's discounts always. Like, I know I'm going to need to be out ahead of last year, because if I'm going to have to ship stuff or travel plans or whatever. So I want to get ahead of it. And I feel like consumers are now smart enough that they pick that stuff up, that it'll be really interesting. So, okay, so we've done everything right early on. We're growing a big list. We've really built that up. What are some ways, or what are some tactics that you would recommend that are really effective for now, like whether it's that October, November, December timeframe, like we can really rev up and use the list properly?
Yeah, I think getting the automations in place is very important. That's, more of the automatic sit back, the money is being made in the background while you can focus on the campaigns. That's something that I always focus on with my merchants straight away, is like, let's get those abandoned carts set up. Even if you want to create a specific Black Friday, Cyber Monday abandoned cart, the customer win backs, stuff like a subscriber may have subscribed but hasn't made an order, have all those automations, because you're going to have customers who come to your website, whether it's now, closer to Black Friday, or during Black Friday, where they'll just come on your website, they might sign up, and they might not make a purchase. So having all those automations in line, ready to go now, that's something that I'm definitely pushing with all my clients, just to have ready. But then with campaigns, start introducing your products, start pushing blog contents, to kind of go back to one of my previous points of, yes, you can send a campaign and have like a discount and get more people purchasing, and it's easier to get a person who's already purchased to purchase again, but also pushing content based around your products, because a lot of customers, they want to learn about your product, they want to see what it is, read the reviews, compare it to another brand, so I'm starting to do that right now as well, because it's a lot more easier to, I guess, convince a customer you've loaded them up with all the information. So a lot more of those stuff that I'm starting to push and get customers to push out.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to put a couple companies on blast here, but I am so tired of seeing the welcome series that are like, hey, you signed up for a discount. And then 2 days later, hey, did you forget your discount? And then 3 days later, hey, did you forget your discount? And like, it still astounds me that the same companies, or a lot of these companies, will have like a 10-step email flow that has these like intricate welcome to the brand, a founder story, product education, all these like really complicated welcome flows in email. And then in SMS, it's just discount, follow-up discount, follow-up discount, of like what you were mentioning, like, hey, here are all of the other things that we offer, and here's like a link to our product reviews, or this cool press article that we got that like will help sell people. Because I completely agree, like they didn't sign up for your SMS list because they don't want to learn more about your company. Like they're clearly making that decision. And then something that I heard about recently that I thought was really fascinating is a failure to launch flow. We never really come up with like this clean term, but it's kind of like what you're mentioning, right? Like people who signed up who didn't buy off of your welcome series or any of the like top of funnel automations, having a flow dedicated just for them. So my question for you on just kind of like this entire umbrella is, and this is definitely for more of like the advanced, someone's already have it set up. What's your thoughts on the like customed version of all of the flows for the holidays specifically?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of that for sure. And I think you're during the I've seen businesses use just their generic abandoned cart or that kind of win back flows. But I think during the holidays, it's definitely a time to optimize that language, change it around a little bit if you're not offering any of those value props. And I've seen it time and time again with businesses. You go on their website, they offer free returns, they offer free shipping over X amount, or just in general, they might offer Afterpay or Klarna or any of these other kind of buy now, pay later options, but there's no mention of in your SMS. And that's something that can entice customers to really make that purchase. So for Black Friday, especially when a lot of customers are purchasing, something like Afterpay is going to come in really handy because you can make much more, larger purchases, don't have to worry about paying for it right now. So, adding that into your wording, adding that in, and even wishing someone like happy holidays versus, hey, you left this in your cart. I think that goes, a long way of just adding to that more personal channel, which is SMS, and it's going right to their device. You might as well use it leverage it as much as you can. But yeah, big fan of customizing for the holidays and changing up those automations for sure.
I'm gonna put that in the bucket of one of my like biggest mistakes that I used to do. Is it's just, I mean, it is a lot of work, but I really do think it does make a huge difference, even if you don't see it in the like campaign level performance. But especially on the consumer side, like when I go through those things and I'm like, everything on your site is holiday themed, and everything on your ads is holiday themed, and everything on your like every other channel is holiday themed. Then you get like an email or an SMS message, and it's just like a, "Hey there, how are you doing?" It's like it just stands out. So I do agree. I think that is so important. And when you think about it, it's probably not that hard, right? Like, are you cloning flows and then just customizing it, or like are you rebuilding them from scratch?
Yeah, two options. It really depends on the merchant themselves, but we can just clone the original automation if they wanted to, and then customize that wording. And what I'm starting to do, and it's something that's really great that Postscript offers as well, is like A/B testing, and you can set up multiple split tests. So it's very very hard to get one message perfectly right that's going to have the highest click-through rates, highest conversion rates, highest earnings, just because every consumer is different. So that's another thing, cloning it, but also A/B testing it. Shall we refer to the customer by their first name, or should we just say, "Hey there"? Should we add urgency and tell them that discount expires in 24 hours versus here's a discount and there's no urgency. Or as I said, adding those mentions of like Afterpay and free shipping and the return. So yeah, definitely cloning, customizing, but also split testing. That's something that I have a lot of my merchants currently doing right now during summertime. It's a little bit of a quieter month, but it really allows you as a brand to kind of have a more data backed decision based on which one message or which message actually works. And I wanted to go back to something, Jeremy, just about the welcome series, because that's something that I notice some brands do really well, but also not so well. And I think uh, having your welcome series just full of discounts and reminders of like, hey, after 10 hours, don't forget your 25%, don't forget your 10%. It just becomes very salesy. Like if you think of, a business owner explaining or welcoming their business, they're not going to be talking about discounts straight away. So I'm always pushing for my merchants to have a bit of a more less salesy, but more of like a introducing your business. This is one of the first messages they're going to get, if they don't opt in through keyword or whatever the case might be. Introduce it like you would, introducing your business, and don't get it in the mind of customers that, hey, here's 25% or here's a discount, because they'll start thinking that this brand must be just about discounts. Why are they always discounting? So I'm always pushing for introducing. Don't overdo it at the start because you'll get high on sub rates. So just kind of explaining the business and not overdoing it at the start with the welcome series.
Yeah, definitely. To me, that's like the greatest indicator that an email marketer is running SMS at a brand. That's like I've always put that together is like because it's just it is a mindset shift of like everyone's going to read this message. And if somebody doesn't respond, that means that they got it and they just didn't like it. And I think that's like a hard shift of like somebody who's like, how do we get them to open? How do we get them to open? How do we get them to open? And I think that's where like this gets fun is like I think it's also a good example of like it's not just the character difference and it's not just the image, like what you can put in the design in it, but it really is like someone's going to read this. Do they respond? Yes or no? And I completely agree. I think that's also like where people downstream will have problems of like our customers never want to respond to anything other than a discount code. And it's like it's tough, and that's an uphill battle when it's too late. But yeah, I think there's so many different things to focus on. So if we were just going to strip it down to like the three high level things, what should someone do that's going to have the biggest bang for their buck to get them like when they're in Black Friday that they can prepare for now?
I mean, the customer winbacks have all those kind of filters or those automations set up where you're actually able to target people, because not everyone's going to convert straight away. If that was the case and you had 100% conversion rates all the time, that would be great. But have those set up flows where if someone has clicked on a specific automation, went into that link but didn't purchase, have it set up where we're going to target them again after X amount of days. Of course, the Postscript offers the responses, so you can do two-way back and forth. It's going to be a time where there's a lot more traffic on websites, a lot more people interacting with you as it's a very new personal way of communicating. Have that ready if people do ask questions. Be on the lookout for that. Be ready to answer any questions and get them to convert. And then, I guess overall, this might be a less salesy answer, but have fun with it. It's a very personal, it's a very fun way of communicating. As you mentioned, it's not email. You don't have to copy paste this massive text. The open rates of SMS is there. It's really high. It's more of like, are customers going to read this? Are they going to click through? Is that CTA there for them to say, hey, I'm going to make a purchase? But when you get a message, you don't want it to be like an email. So I would say to brands, have fun, add your personality to it. There's some of the brands that I work with that they're not following your typical way of, very structured. They have a very fun way of communicating, like you would text your friend. And that's what I'm seeing really perform well with SMS, that more fun conversational way of doing it. So I would, advise brands who are getting into SMS or currently doing SMS to bring more of their personality, more of what their business is throughout their SMS during the holidays.
Definitely. That is actually my number one gripe with most brands who do SMS. So like, that's where I think most brands are doing it wrong, is they like have this either formal SMS or it's very structured. Whereas I'm completely of the same mind. Like and I kind of think every marketing channel should be like, how are you messaging in this channel the same way that you would talk to your friends? And I see it's also a weird shift if you just like, you throw all this stuff in and sales go way up because customers are like, oh, this is a great moment. I like, I will get off the fence and I will finally make a decision. So which rounds into the next question I was going to ask is like, what do you see as the common mistake or just like the thing that you keep seeing over and over again that you wish brands would stop doing?
Yeah, maybe not just stop doing, but also start doing. Back to the point of like value props. I see so many messages that are going out trying to entice customers to come back and make the purchase. Of course, a lot of brands don't want to add discounts, but they have a lot on their website that, some brands have 50,000 five-star reviews, but there's no mention of that in your message. If as a consumer, I get a text message of a product that I've abandoned and I am reminded that this product has 50,000 five-star reviews, it's going to entice me more to, click through on the link and maybe make a purchase versus, hey, you left this order, click this link. So I'm seeing now it's starting to get, it's starting to grow a little bit more, but that's a mistake that I'm seeing a lot of brands not add that mention of free shipping, free returns. That's kind of like mistakes. I wouldn't call them mistakes. I think it's still a big learning experience for everyone who's using SMS, but also using keywords to your advantage, getting customers to text your keyword to communicate and conversate, but also to opt into your SMS. So, again, as I mentioned with the kind of having fun with it, use funny keywords. Like one of my brands, Tushy, I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Big fans of the Tushy team.
Yeah. If I have the best conversations when I get on a call with them, just because they use the funniest keywords. They're not using text Tushy 10 for a 10% discount. They're texting the words that relate more to their brand. And so a lot more fun. And anyone who knows what Tushy does and their product, they'll kind of know and get an idea of like the keywords, but it works so well. It catches people's attention versus your typical shop name with a 10 at the end to get 10%. It's not enticing as much.
For anybody who doesn't know Tushy, type hellotushy.com into your browser, not tushy.com. Trust me, I'm going to save you some awkwardness there. But yeah, they also have a lot of fun with it. I think they call their CS team gurus, like gurus. But so yeah, I think if you have a creative brand or you want to be more creative, I think it is a great channel. Okay, so I have a couple questions just because I know you're incredibly busy and you got to get back to actually building all of this, help merchants build all of this stuff. So my first question to you is, if you're going back and starting it all over again, what is one lesson that you would impress upon yourself that was a big aha moment that you wish you would have had from the beginning?
When it comes to SMS or e-commerce?
Dealer's choice.
Maybe that's a little bit of a tougher question. I think when it comes to SMS, I think a lot of merchants, as much as we talked about the fun part of it and growing business, I think there's also a serious side of it when it comes to compliance. So, it is a very personal channel. So if you are going to get involved in it, and I would have, I guess at the start or throughout my journey, understand that and kind of perfect that a little bit more, because it is a very serious part of, compliance and texting customers, making sure that they understand that they've opted in for X amount, or for a specific automation or flow. So yeah, I think that's something that I would encourage people, because when I started working directly with SMS, I realized that it's a very big and important area to SMS. So I guess that would be my aha moment, or whatever we want to call it.
Definitely. Also, TCPA in America is some nasty legislation, so definitely on board with you there. Okay, second question. What's one piece of content that you would recommend everybody consumes? Could be a book, blog, podcast, video, really whatever you want. The only caveat is that it cannot be your own.
It can't be my own, and it can be related to any subject, any topic.
Yeah, anything that you just was really impactful for you.
There's a book that my partner and I we kind of read together in our own time, Why We Sleep, and I think it's super important, and it's not just for other customer success managers or other people in this industry, but also for business owners. Again, e-commerce is 24/7. A lot of sales, a lot of more people online, and this book really helped me understand the importance of sleep, getting rest, getting enough rest, getting the right type of sleep to kind of be functioning correctly throughout the day, and kind of making better decisions. So I don't know if that was the best one, but that's something I read. I don't always have the most time just because I'm so engaged and it's a very busy time, but that's something that really kind of.
Very cool. All right, I'll have to add that to the list. I'm not sure I've heard of that one before, but I could definitely use more sleep. Okay, second to last question. Basically, if you're sitting in my seat and you're interviewing Wassim, what should we have covered today? What did I miss?
Yeah, I'd say to look out for our BFCM Content Hub. We have a holiday hub that's coming up on our website. I believe it is live now. So if you search Postscript's Holiday Hub, we're starting to push out content to help merchants of all sizes, whether you're just getting started or you're already submerged in SMS, just to get more ideas about growing your list, setting up your automations, getting those right campaigns, converting customers now. So it'll be a lot more easier. So I think that would be one of the main things that I missed or didn't really discuss a lot more in detail, but there's a lot of information out there. And, we have some really good people on our team at Postscript who've combined all that. So, Postscript, we're fully focused SMS company. We have all SMS experts here. So our main job is to, help our customers. So that's a really good content hub for anyone who wants to read into it.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah, we'll coordinate with the team to make sure that the link to that is in the show notes below. And then my last question for you before we wrap up, where can everybody learn more about what you have going on if they want to connect with you after this?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the easiest place to find me. Wassim Dakik. I know that's a bit of a hard name to spell, but I mean Wassim. And you'll find me. I'm one of 3 enterprise customer success managers at Postscript. So not that hard to find, but hit me up if you have any questions. If you're just interested in SMS, you want to learn a bit more, any of the strategies, that's the best way you can find me. Or I'm sure if you contact Postscript's team, they'll figure it out. I'm the only Wassim who works at Postscript, so not hard to find. Very
cool. Well, we really appreciate the time. Thanks, Wassim.
Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Thanks for listening to another week's episode of the Messenger Mastermind podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with another e-commerce marketer. And always, let us know what you think down in the comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe. If you're looking for cutting-edge tactics and the resources that we rely on to run our businesses, sign up for our newsletter. We'll include a link down below. As always, stay confident, connect with your customers, and keep crushing.